Welcome to In the Ring with Termite and Mr. S. And boy, do I have a special for you today. Mr. S. I've been so excited about this.
I can tell. I can tell you really are today.
This is huge. I'm going to tell you parts of my story and his story as we go back, but I got the one and only Ralph Cooper. I'm going to brag on Ralph a little bit, and then I'm going to make you brag on yourself because you've got so much to tell. But me and Ralph go back. We were thinking a while ago, maybe 10 or 11 or 12. That's when I got started. I was starting when I was 10, and he was with KYOK?
And the Forward Times newspaper.
And the Forward Times newspaper.
Right.
And I'm not going to get talking about color, but we got color to talk about.
Right.
When a lot of whites didn't go around the black, I was being introduced to the black world. I was on the black radio station. And for a while, I got to become a regular on coming back and forth. And we were laughing a while ago. I can remember when Ralph would call me and say, Termite, get over here. My person didn't show up on the radio. But Ralph Cooper, he was with KYOK and with the newspaper. And I want you to tell us about all that in just a minute. I want to brag a little bit more. I'm bragging because I'm so honored that I get to interview him. Mr. S, this is probably one of the highlights of my career, is going back with him because Ralph has interviewed the greats from, and I'm not even going to tell them, but from, I'm not going to tell them, I'm going to start telling them.
Let's tell them.
From Muhammad Ali to, George Foreman to,
and I'll help you a little bit, just a little bit. Sugar Ray Robinson, Archie Moore.
Oh, these are great.
Even the one who taught you in your early days, Joe Brown.
Joe Brown.
Yeah, and Ken Norton back in the day, Larry Holmes before he was Larry Holmes, when he was fighting four-rounders. So we can go on and on, and Evander Holyfield, of course.
So you just named some greats. You just named so many of them, but, Sugar Ray Robinson, one of the greatest fighters of all time. Maybe the greatest boxer of all time. And then, we talked about George Foreman. We talked about Kenny Weldon. Joe Brown. Yeah. Joe Brown was one of the all-time great lightweight champions of the world. And Mr. S, if we get into my story, really, he just brought something up. We talked about...
He used to carry his golf clubs, didn't he?
Who did? He would carry his golf clubs? I need to hear more about that.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
He was a lightweight champion of the world.
Right.
And it was because of Joe Brown that I got with Kenny Weldon. Joe Brown was a little wild at that time. Whole bunch wild.
Right.
And he told my dad, he said, Bill, he goes, I've got him started and I've taught him the basics, but we need to get him with somebody else that's more settled. And he said, I want you to go to Kenny Weldon. We didn't know Kenny Weldon at that time. And Joe Brown introduced us to Kenny Weldon. This is incredible. I mean, he's bringing back stuff that I forgot about. Yeah. There's been some of those heroes in your life at times. He was one of the heroes in my life. And he gave me opportunity that other people didn't have. I mean, let's talk color right now. I was white, and I was on an all-black station, and I was a regular. And he introduced me to all the black athletes. And thank you, Ralph.
Thank you. Well, hey, it was my pleasure. And I can't thank you enough for being a friend also, and also for making me look good. I mean, it wasn't like I was just introducing anybody to these people. I mean, you were world-class in my opinion. You carried yourself world-class in and out of the ring, and that was huge. That always has been huge to me.
Well, I'm so honored. Yeah. And Mr. S, this may be the highlight of all the interviews we do, is me having him. And you know what made me feel so good is all I did was call him. He says, I'll be there.
Oh, yeah.
And that's pretty awesome. So Ralph, what we're doing on this talk show is there's a lot of people that hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And we want to be encouragement. We call it In the Ring of Life.
Right.
And let's talk about your ring of life. You became big when black didn't get big.
Right. Because of, you grew up in Uvalde, off of Uvalde.
That's
I grew
right.
up off of Reed Road in Scott here in Houston, which is about 5 minutes from the NRG Stadium now. But the Astrodome was one of the things that changed my life. When
I don't want to date you, but set a time period. Just
we're talking about 1962 now.
Yep.
Yeah.
When
60s.
1960, the early 19 when my mother came and asked who should she vote? Should she vote for the bond issue to get the Astrodome built?
Oh wow,
Wow.
that's some history there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So and she was paying poll tax. Blacks had to pay a poll tax. I don't know if you've ever heard
I
that.
have not.
But you had to pay a poll tax, 50 cents or $1 or whatever it was to vote.
Wow.
You go into like a Fiesta or somewhere, go up to the window, and you pay to vote, to pay for the right to vote. But anyway,
Okay, I was not aware of that. That's
so she came. She knew I read a lot about sports, so she came and asked me, should she vote for the bond issue? And I said yes, because it means we're going to get a major league team here.
you're thinking ahead already.
Oh yeah, a major league baseball team here, and it probably changed the whole city at some point.
Yeah.
Not thinking that it would become as big as it became, right? But so I go back to then, and my mother did vote for it, and it did pass. And
Now we have the Astrodome.
yeah, so, but being in a neighborhood, I grew up in a neighborhood with some of the greatest athletes in the world. At that time, Sunnyside, which was built by a white gentleman, a white man, a white realtor built Sunnyside, built the Sunnyside that I lived in. And when he passed, he left all of his money, not to his family, but to the Worthing Foundation, Scholarship Foundation.
Oh, wow.
And it still exists today. People are still getting Worthing scholarships, but they didn't know
They don't know the history.
they were getting it from and we didn't know the school was named after a white guy until later on, after you got there. But that's what happened. So being from a neighborhood where it looked like and this is off of 288 now. You know what's happening in the 288 area.
Oh, yeah.
It's booming. And I can remember when all wells were there and where the dome was built, people were hunting and all that kind of stuff. Wow. So you were in a position where many people didn't make it. But you had great coaches who were mentors. They not only taught you about playing sports or playing athletics, they also taught you about life.
The life side.
Yeah. So one of the most disappointing times came when we had about 400 people out for the football team. Clifford Branch, who's in the Hall of Fame now, Michael Singletary's relatives, who were better than him, although he's in the Hall of Fame. And then we had the great Otis Taylor, who played in the first Super Bowl in our school, who should be in the Hall of Fame. And that area would create Larry Mishaw, Greg Cadillac Anderson.
Man, just out of this one little area.
Out of this one
like
little
what's
area.
in the water?
Right.
Something's going on.
So you go out for the football team, and the coach comes up and say, "Hey, look, about 5 or 6 of us." He said, "You guys, you see what's out there?" So we looked out. There's 400 or 500 people out there. He said, "What I need is a stat keeper, a trainer,
He's
and
building a team. He's like,
a historian." So everybody grabbed a job. I became the historian, and the coach's name was Oliver Shaw Brown. When he had his retirement party with Michael Singletary and Clifford Branch and all of them were there, I was the MC because I knew the history. So
He's naming great.
So that's how it started.
Great.
yeah. So you because of what you got by being around those great people and the great coaches, you felt that you could always make it. I've been in. I went to the first time I went to the Cotton Bowl football game in Dallas, and I was the only black in the press area, right? Right.
Wow.
I laugh at this now. So a guy comes up behind me. I'm looking at the bulletin board or something, and says the trash can is over there. Indicating that I'm there.
he's thinking you're there to change the trash.
So I just looked at him, and then later on, he came back and apologized in that same game after he found out I was a reporter, but I was the first black. I was the only black in there at that particular time. So you had a lot of situations like that. And I'm gonna call a name. The first fight, heavyweight fight I ever covered was not an Ali fight. It was Dave Zigowitz. He knows who I'm talking about, and Joe Frazier. They fought in Houston in the Coliseum, and Earl Gillum was the promoter.
I'm going to interrupt you. I talked to Dave Zigowitz about 6 months ago.
Yeah, see.
Unreal. He's 90-something years old now.
Right. He got a fight with Joe Frazier in Joe Frazier's prime.
Yeah.
And he lasted the fight only went about a couple of minutes.
Oh, wow.
It was one of the quickest fights ever.
Okay.
But he
Probably
picked up
for the
that pace.
best.
Yeah, so now Ali fights here. Now it's 71, and I had never been to one of his fights. So the PR guy, to show you how you can become friends with people, was a Murray Goodman. He was a Russian.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
He was a Russian, and he at that time had to be about 60 years old. And I would go to the workouts every day, and I'd ask him, how do I get a pass? And he kept saying I was going to get a pass. So one day he said, do you know any, to show you again, life is strange, do you know any great barbecue places around here? And I said, I know a whole bunch of them. So he gave me $20. He said, if you can, bring me some. So I said, where you staying at? They were staying at the Astro Village Hotel, which is on 610 and Kirby now. And that evening, when I got off from work, I took him some barbecue. The next day, I go back to the workout. He gave me $50 and say, can you bring me some more? Find another place. So then I asked, what about my pass? When do I fill out the application? He said, don't worry about the pass. So this went on for about 3 weeks. So now it's the day of the fight, and I still don't have a pass, right? So he comes up to me, and he had a lady, they took your picture back then and put on the pass. So the lady comes up, takes my picture, and I get the pass, right? But I don't realize where, I was so excited I didn't look. I was at ringside. Everybody was wondering, how did this guy get on?
You're just trying to get in the door.
Yeah, but it was the barbecue.
It was the barbecue that did it. Hey,
and the work.
They say that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach.
Right. So you become friends with an individual like that. And again, we go back to coming into this not knowing really what to expect, and people not knowing what to expect from you. But because of what you had been taught, you knew that if you outworked people, you got up in the middle of the night to do interviews, you called friends to be part of whatever they were doing or whatever you were doing. If you outwork them, you could accomplish all kind of things.
That's, man, I want to just pause right there.
Yeah.
The idea of you just telling the story of you had no expectation. No. You're just trying to get this guy some good barbecue. You like barbecue.
And get a press pass.
You're trying. Well, you had an expectation, right? You had a little expectation. You just wanted to get in the door.
Right.
And it turns out you got way more than you bargained for just because of the character that you behind it.
Right.
And I think we need to emphasize, man, why are you doing things?
Right. And see, I emphasize to people that they know that you should never be ashamed of where you came from and how hard that it was for you to get to where you got to. They need to know these stories because some of them just think the press passes just fall out of the sky.
Right.
You didn't have to work hard, et cetera. But see, in his case, he was grabbing the headlines. See, he was on the front of the Houston. We had two newspapers, the Houston Post and the Houston Chronicle. Yeah. Even as a kid, he was being him and Kenny Weldon, and it was a heavyweight. What called his name?
Boudreaux.
Johnny Boudreaux. Johnny Boudreaux. They were grabbing. Johnny Boudreaux was black. The other two guys were white. They grabbed all the headlines. They were the main characters in boxing here in Houston on the amateur side as they went up. And you lived out in this neighborhood you lived in at that time, not thinking that one day you would be around these type people.
You don't think about that. Not at all.
Although you were around great athletes, you didn't think you would be around what then they were the headliner. So, you think about that, and then you think about how when you started, you were disappointed. When I went to the Forward Times newspaper, they had a thing in the paper, they wanted writers, right? So they gave me a job, and I thought I was going to be in sports. They sent me to courtrooms.
Courtrooms, from sport to court.
Yeah, and to the jails to write about whatever I saw that I wanted to write about. And I saw some of the most horrible individuals ever and interviewed some of them in cells in rooms somewhat like this, smaller though. Where before the Miranda Act.
Okay.
And I believed in having a tape recorder because it was easy to get people to flow. So I remember one case was where 7 young guys had, from 16 to about 25, had raped women. And they caught all of them. So I had gotten close to the detectives. They knew how I interviewed people. So they said, you want to come down and interview these guys? Now, I interviewed them without lawyers or anything. On tape, they admitted to me that they asked, when I asked, why would a guy like you rape a woman and you look like you do? They explained all that. That's on tape. So about 3 days later, my tape was subpoenaed. They used it to. That's when I found out how powerful the media could be. They took those tapes and actually prosecuted those guys.
Wow.
Without them having a lawyer or anything in there. So you think back about that, and then you think about not being afraid to be told no when you go up to people to interview them. You know?
Yeah, so you've interviewed some
Joe
very
Lewis, even Joe
interesting
Lewis.
characters.
Yeah.
Even Joe Lewis.
So it's training ground is basically what you're saying.
Yeah,
So,
the jails were a training ground.
so I guess the moral of the story is people out there, they want to be big. They want to be the sportscaster. They want to interview the famous people. But hey, you got to start interviewing
Somewhere.
people in
Right,
prison.
Right.
You know, I'm getting a kick out of going back in history and seeing how far we've come.
Right.
And I hate to get into race and color, but I remember when the blacks, he was the only one that could interview people, and they wouldn't let anybody else. Yeah. And I remember when you took me to my first black club.
Yeah, we was promoting you. You were fighting for Don King, and he called one day, and he said, could you take him around, because they're trying to get TV ratings. Mm-hmm. So he said, could you take him around to some of the black clubs? You know, he was big on that kind of stuff. I said, restaurants? He said, no, clubs at night. Take him at night. I said, we're going to be, white guy, we're going to be around. He said,
Your question, like, are you sure? Are you sure?
He said, I've been around you know what to do. So sure enough, we went to the clubs, and I get the DJ, whoever was DJing, they would announce Termite Watkins is here. He's fighting on ABC TV, blah, 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 such and such a date. And he know the rest. They took pictures with him, asked for autographs, and he was big. I mean, he was very, he learned quick also about PR and how black people, we were all different, but we were really people.
Teachers.
Yeah, we were all people. And he learned real well in that regard. So,
you know, we've come so far. We don't have those problems as bad as they used to be.
Right.
When we were together.
Right.
And it was a problem back then because
different time.
It was a problem.
We got problems now, but I think.
But it was different.
But see, I can see his father reminded me of some of the fathers of people that I grew up with. Although his father, they were white. Yeah. In the black neighborhood, we had some fathers didn't want their sons to play football, for an example, or they were very protective of them. His father was very protective of him. Like when he had to move up, it was time for him to move up. Yeah. His father trusted Don King, but he didn't really trust Don King. He would come to me and say, "Do you think he's rushing him?" He come to me. Do you think he's rushing him a little bit? Do you think we're moving up too fast? I said, no, he ought to be able to fight this guy. And he fought in Madison Square Garden. Now, how old were you? You were very young when he fought in Madison Square Garden. Yeah. He fought against a veteran, and it was a learning process for him, but he won over a lot of fans by fighting. Imagine you fighting in Madison Square Garden.
Teo Ozuna.
Yeah.
Ozuna, I had a draw with him.
Yeah. So, but his father was always very protective, and as any father, like I said, I grew up with guys. They didn't. Some guys didn't want the sons to play baseball because they thought they were going to get hit with the ball. Although they had played baseball, they were very protective of their sons, and his father was. And so you think about some of the things you went through, and I mean, it was all. It's been a great ride. I mean,
it's not over yet.
I gotta ask you this, and you can ask questions too. But this is so exciting for me. Somebody that I love and care for so much that I'm getting to interview you. But you got to interview so many greats. You named some people a while ago, but who would be the top 1 or 2 or 3 of interviews that of big names? Well, because he's been around the big names.
Well. See, most people were going to say Ali, and he was.
Everybody
big.
knows that name, of course.
But Sugar Ray Robinson, to interview Sugar Ray Robinson was huge for me, And then you ask him, how could you turn down, Muhammad Ali tried to get him to be his trainer. How could you turn him down to be his trainer? And he said, hey, look, he called you little buddy. He said, little buddy, everything he's doing, I did it bigger and better. He said, I had my pink Cadillac or whatever. I had a manicurist. I had a barber. I had a little midget. He said he had a little midget he kept around to make him laugh. And he talked about all this stuff. And
Definitely a different era.
Yeah, different era. Then he said, at the age I am now, he was at the Progressive Amateur Boxing Association that day.
Reverend Ray.
He said, at the age I am now, he said, tonight I plan to be at home at 9 o'clock with my wife. He said, I did all that, everything they did. Everything he's doing, I did. And I'm just happy to be where I am right now. That's what he said. And I always remembered that. He was a great interview. Then another great interview was Hector Camacho.
You remember that name? Macho Camacho?
Macho Man, yeah. The Macho Man was fearless, really, even at a young age. When you had Thomas Hearns and Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvelous Marvin Hagler and Aaron Pryor and all them people raising a lot of hell in boxing, the Macho Man actually would challenge these people of Puerto Rico. He would actually challenge these people, he was from New York, and he would challenge these people, but every other word out of his mouth was a word of profanity. Now, he loved to curse, but to me, he was a great personality and a great person. I loved to interview him. And then Archie Moore, who was sort of philosophical.
Completely different kind of guy.
Yeah, real smooth.
Archie Moore is one of the great trainers and fighters.
Right. He was something else. I mean, he was really, really good. Another one that you watched the transformation of George Foreman.
Yeah.
You
saw him from the time he started.
Yeah.
Come on up.
But the biggest change I saw in George Foreman, before he had his religious experience in Puerto Rico, a day before the fight, he was I'm going to break his neck. He was talking about Jimmy Young.
Jimmy Young.
I'm going to break his neck. Now, after the fight, he's in the hospital now, right? He's sucking...
George Foreman is.
Yeah, he's sucking water out of cotton balls because the arena that they had to fight in had nothing but fans like this and no air conditioning. And it was packed down in Puerto Rico that night. Now, some people said he got dehydrated. He says he had a religious experience. But you go over, the man says he had a religious experience. And there was a lot of shouting and screaming going on. And then later on, you notice that something had happened because he was a different man.
Yeah.
Wow.
He went from
knocking I didn't know that part of his story.
From breaking this man's neck, now you're in the hospital just completely different, And it looked like he was trying to figure out, I don't know what's in his movie, but he was trying to figure out what had happened to him, basically. But so you think about those type of things, and then you think about some of the other thing we had in common was his trainer, Albert Potato Pie Bolden, one of a kind.
I love these names.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Potato Pie.
I always joke that I need to have a name. You got Termite, Potato Pie.
The guy he's talking about, I loved him so much that if he would have told me, go out in the ring and put one hand over your eyes, turn a circle and swing, I would have done it. If I would have been with him when I fought for the world championship, I would have won the world championship.
Yeah. See, and he said, can you talk to Potato Pie and his father? Your father would disagree at times. He said, could you go and talk to him? Tell him, I'm not going to get the man killed. I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to get him killed. I know how to train him. But, Albert Potato Pie Bolden, you think about all of these great individuals in the fight game, even Don King. And, when Don King signed him and with his father to fight in New York in Madison Square Garden and then do some other things, I went with him up to New York and we went out to some golf resort or something.
Yep.
And
Forgot about this.
And we saw Don King dancing.
Don King dancing.
Oh yeah. He introduced him and his father, and I think your mother was there too. He introduced the whole family.
And my ex, Linda.
Yeah, he introduced everybody, all of them to the, because he had a number of newspaper people came up to that resort. and the New York Times and Washington Post, all of those
It
people
was the
came.
place to be.
Oh, my goodness. And then to tap it off was to see Don King actually dancing that particular evening. That was the cap off.
That would be a highlight of the night. Seeing that hair just kind of tilting around the dance floor.
Right. And so you think about that, and then you think, I go back to the Astrodome, and Muhammad Ali is fighting. This is in the 60s now. This is around this was before the draft case came up, before they found him guilty of draft evasion, which was overturned. But you pay $5, and you're supposed to sit up in the yellow seats. I wasn't in the media, of course, then. I paid the $5. He fought Cleveland Williams, and he fought Ernie Terrell here. And for those, I would pay the $5 and never sit in the yellow section. You know, you find a way to wiggle down and sit as close as you could. But to have those particular ventures in Houston and to see a great champion like that here also changed it a lot. It made you believe you could do anything.
It inspires.
Yeah. If you see a guy like that, where he came from, doing what he's doing now, and then even Cleveland Williams, who had been shot twice.
Yeah,
He dropped from 220 to 165, and now he's fighting for the championship. And
220 to 165. It's like a whole different person.
And he came back and fought for they made money off of it. Yeah.
You know, Ralph, that ring was given to Kenny Weldon after that fight.
Right.
Do you know I got that ring now?
Oh, okay. See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I have that ring.
Yeah.
When Ali fought him in 1966, fought Big Cat Williams. Now, Big Cat Williams, this is a guy that
was muscular.
He looked like a Hercules, and he used to knock people over the rope, is what Joe Brown told me.
Yeah.
And he was a good-looking guy. He was big, 6'4", muscular, and
never lifted a weight.
Never, just natural.
Yeah,
freak of nature.
Yeah. And now he's the one. I love to tell this story. One day he was going to use Dad's boat and go fishing because Cleveland loved to fish. He loved to fish, and so one day he's out and he's popping me on my head, doing this, and he's fixing to. Actually, he was going to fight Ali, and anyway, I turned around. I was 10 years old. 65 pounds, and I turned around and I looked at him and I said, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And he looks at me and he talked real soft. He said, but the smaller they are, the further they fly. And so, man, these are some memories. So go back in history a little bit. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in a place about midway between Houston and Dallas, up 45, a place called Jewett, Texas, Leon County. And Leon County, my grandparents, both sides, they were farmers, and you learn at an early age what work was about. I can remember at 7, I was born there. Wow. And so the first time I went to stay with my grandparents during the summer, I was 7, and I thought I was going on a nice vacation where I get up at 10 o'clock, right? But these people got up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. Your grandmother listened to the radio all the time because she gave your grandfather the prices of the crops that day. They had like a farmer's report. And I can remember the first time I heard radio, they were talking about peas, 5 cents a pound and all that kind of stuff, going on. So you lived there with your grandparents, and I'm thinking that you're going to have it real easy, and then they wake you up and tell you that you got to hit the fields in about at 40 minutes or something. And the fields may have been, and I know you all may think I'm exaggerating, they had all this property, and they had grown these crops, peas, and 5 football fields long. Yeah. So you go up 2 rows, they put you in the middle. Even then, although you were 7 years old, you had never done this before. You putting peas into that bag. You go up, you got to come back down. And I had one grandfather on my father's side. He was like a dictator. And then the other grandfather was a capitalist. He believed in whatever you worked for, you got paid that. The other grandfather, the communist or the dictator, let's put all the money. He put all the money in. What everybody did goes to him. then he decides what he's going.
He decides. He's the decider.
Now you know which one I enjoyed working for.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, so you learn that from your grandparents and how your grandmother and how they worked. And then one grandfather was a preacher. The one that was a dictator was the preacher, right? So you would think he would have been the capitalist. And then the capitalist was although he was a farmer, he bootlegged. The county was dry. The county was dry, and you didn't realize how, at an early age, you were watching how he interacted with white people also. Because this was a dry county. They lived on the main road, and all these white guys would come over there, especially like on, say, Friday and Saturday.
Yep, weekends coming.
And they would get you see the little brown bags. The brown bags had whiskey in them, moonshine, or whatever you want to call it.
Moonshine.
Yeah, and he was selling moonshine, and then he was...
He's a preacher. He'd preach on Sunday, so moonshine on Saturday.
Yeah, this is the other one. Yeah, this is the other one. So, and then he would share with you, don't grow up and do this. Don't grow up and drink this. But he was selling it, man. They were buying it, so hey.
Wow.
So you saw, and then you saw how they grew stuff.
Yeah. And you obviously learned work ethic from an early age.
You learn.
How much would you attribute some of that to you pushing through? 60
or 70%, and those coaches at the school in Sunnyside at Worthing. So so all of that played a role in who you are. It's hard to sleep to 9 or 10 o'clock even now.
Yeah, I can imagine. I still can't.
Ralph, was called our show is called In the Ring of Life.
Right.
All right, and we talk about a lot of success stories. We talk not success stories. Now, tell me some of the times that you got knocked down in life, whether it be over race, whether it be over, family matter or interview. What are some of the times that you can remember that you were knocked down in life? And we're doing this because we want people to know that they could grow up and be the next Ralph.
Right. You, in regards to being knocked down, I was knocked down at an early age. Okay, so I had always had my father in my life. Mm-hmm. So at about 9 or 10, my father left, and you kept waiting for your father to come back. You got
he left.
He
just left.
He just left. So you're waiting for you got two sisters, you're the oldest kid, and your mother. So you're waiting for your father to come back. He never comes back. He's gone, although you later on in life you will have a relationship, but at that particular time your father's gone. So now you're about 10 years old, right? You're in the fifth or 6th grade. So a low point in life was when I skipped, I was making all A's in school, one of the smartest people in the classroom. And I skipped school for about 10 days. But I didn't skip school necessarily to just skip school. I went around my neighborhood, went around what is now Cullen. Cullen and Reed Road, they had businesses all up and down the street. So I imagine, sometimes I think about it now, what did I look like coming up to these business people, asking them for a job? And I'm 10 years young, right?
Wow.
So all of them basically told me the same thing. Boy, you need to go back to school, blah, blah, blah. You need to be in school. They didn't, why you're not in school, that kind of stuff. So you skip school. Now the low point came is this. I was so good that I could skip school for 10 days before my sisters were asked where was I, because I was doing so well in the classroom. So I embarrassed my sisters, not me. I embarrassed my sisters and my mother and all them, because the teachers now, when I wasn't in school, they went, well, his sisters are here. And then my sisters say, he's at school. He walks us to school every day.
So you walked to school. You just kind of ducked out right after that.
Walked into school and ducked out. So now your mother's found out about it, the person she works for, and your uncles have found out about it, and you think you're going to get whipped to death, right? And then they took the other approach on you. They didn't whip you. They talked to you, and to find out why you did it. Then I had one uncle who was an alcoholic, and he lived here in Houston, and then I had another uncle who lived in Dallas. He called. But the one that was the alcoholic said, look, I'm going to come see you every Sunday. As long as you let me know you got to go to school. He said, he worked at a service station. He said, all the little tip money I'm going to give to you. Now, don't tell nobody. Which I kept a secret. I didn't tell nobody, but I split it with. But anyway, to make a long story short, the other one was the teacher. The teacher was pretty. The teacher was about 30.
I was waiting for something different.
When the teacher came and said, why would you skip my class? She was 30. And I told her what was going on in my life, blah, blah, blah. And her name was Irma Davis. She was a light complexion, brown-skinned, real pretty. And she sort of took me under her wing. And then later on in life, she died at about 95. She said I was her favorite student. She said, because you were the most challenging one that I had ever had.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I became her favorite. So that's one of the low points. And but then the love that I was shown played a role in
Love
me
conquers.
being able to come back.
Yeah.
That acceptance.
Yeah, the acceptance that you got from, and then the fact that you didn't get, I thought my mama was gonna beat the devil out of me, and then you didn't get whipped, and you were whipped in another way.
That
you were
grace,
whipped with love.
Yeah.
You were whipped.
Yeah, there's sayings that say I think it's biblical. It's like pouring hot ashes when you're nice to your adversary.
Another low point in life, same time, 10 to 11 years old, same time, 10 or 11, same with the same teacher. So I'm in the classroom, and I know you all don't, being white, you all just think that everybody in the black neighborhoods are all together. But there was racism in the black neighborhoods. If they were light complexion or they had white features, there was a difference. Okay, so I had the Negro features, black features, thick lips, nappy hair. So we were having a spring dance. They had a spring dance every year. So this girl was high yellow, right? We call her high.
Okay. Yeah, these are terms that I'm not as familiar with.
High yellow, had more of a white look than a black look.
Okay.
But was black. So now they go by the alphabets, and you're supposed to dance. Boy, if I'm supposed to dance with her. So she told the teacher she couldn't dance with me. And so the teacher asked why. Now, the teacher looked like her.
Okay.
Now, this played a role in how I ended up thinking. The teacher looked like her. So she said, so the teacher was making her dance with me until her mother came. And her mother looked like the teacher. You know what I'm saying? The same complexion and everything. So the mother, they were Creole, what we call Creole. So the mother told the teacher that my daughter can't dance with him. So now I'm thinking, should I go tell my mother something like this? And which I didn't do. I didn't tell, but I had the teacher, right? So I didn't go tell my mother, but the teacher told me something. She said, look, you can't dance, you're not going to dance, we're going to make it where you don't dance with her. But she said, I'm going to tell you something. One day this little girl will come back, and she may be a lady then, and she will want to be with you. Now, this is what the teacher I'm thinking about. I said, really? She said, yeah, I know this hurts right now. So she put me, I had to dance with the blackest chick in the room, which at that time, she was blackest, but she was the smartest.
Okay.
And her and I became real good friends over the years until she passed. But to make a long story short, I was disappointed, right, that I couldn't dance with this pretty girl. So years passed by. So one night, William Stickney of the Chronicle and I together, and we were out with
Bill
some
Stickney.
Yeah, we were out with some friends, lady friends, and guess who I see? The woman who didn't want to dance with me when she was a little girl. So now I go to the restroom, and guess who I see when I come out? The lady who didn't want to dance with me, and she said, I know what you've been doing. I'm proud of your success and blah blah blah. She said, I want to apologize to you for what I did to you.
Wow.
When I was a child. So I said, really? She said,
yeah, really? And she was right. He's like, wow, she was right.
Right. So, and she said, here's my number. Or she said, better yet, I get off at what time I get off.
Looky
you
there.
want to come back and pick me up, you can.
Looky there.
And all of the woes and worries and disappointments that happened when I was at that age.
Just disappeared.
Disappeared.
Hey, that's a great story.
And when I saw the teacher, I would talk to the teacher all the time. I said, guess who I saw? She said, who? I told her who. She said, didn't I tell you that was going to happen? Yeah. And I said, yes, you did.
It's that wisdom.
Yeah. So
moral of the story, just wait, do your thing.
Right.
Just
so
keep
going
getting
back
better.
to disappointment as a kid. So you talk about disappointments as a kid.
They shape you if you let them.
Right. If you don't
let them break you.
Right. So you have disappointments as a kid, and then I never told you this story. I did this story I did a report one morning on the radio, and what I was saying was true, but I was told that it was not the time to say it. I said it at the wrong time. I was talking about racism in sports, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't realize the impact of what I had done till the lieutenant governor of Louisiana called, wanted me fired or whatever.
Oh, wow.
It was a thing about Pace Management was a company that promoted the Grambling Texas Southern game, which was the daddy of the Bayou Classic, the Grambling Southern game. So I did a report where I said they didn't need these people, that they could promote the game themselves. But what I didn't know, they were thinking about doing that, but I didn't know the impact of the Pace Management, which the lieutenant governor called the radio station, wanted me fired. So they called me back to the station that morning. So the guy, Rick Roberts, he was the general manager, he said, you need to read an apology on the air. And I said, what I said was true. He said, no, it doesn't matter. You got to read the apology on the air. I said, well, then he gave it to me. So I said, let me go home and read it. And he said, no, you got to read it right now. Right now. You take you into the room and you read it right now. So what looked like a disappointment turned into a blessing. I became friends with Coach Eddie Robinson, who became the winningest coach of all time in football. I was told he called and they were in town, and he wanted me to meet him. So I go to this hotel, that same one on Kirby and 610. Yep. In the middle of the morning, the room is dark. I said, oh, my goodness, maybe they're going to chastise me or whatever. Then they opened the blind. Then they told me he wanted to meet me because what I said was true, and it was going to be rectified, but they wanted to meet a person who had the courage to say that or read that kind of stuff. So we became friends.
All goes back to character.
And again, another disappointment that became a blessing.
And it's all because of your characters.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But you persevered, and look at who you are today. And I'm going to bring this net in because I could actually talk all day long to you. Right. And we got enough stories to talk all day.
Right.
But we're going to save that for another time. But, Ralph, I just want you to know that you've been a huge inspiration to me. You've been there for me when the racism was there, when blacks didn't want me around.
Right.
And when whites didn't want you around. And yet you were my friend, and you're still my friend. And, our friendship goes a lot further. We actually love each other.
Right.
And it's just been my honor to be able to share a little bit of your story.
Right. And like I say, it's been my honor also. And, when I see you, I'm going to call a couple of names. One name in particular. I think about a guy who most people didn't know I was friends with, Jack Gallagher. Oh, yeah. Jack Gallagher wrote for the Houston Post. He was much older than me, and but I learned a lot from him. He learned a lot from me because he was trying to learn the black athlete, and I was trying to learn the business, so we traded off, and I never will forget, talking about disappointments again. This is one I didn't get over. He was in the hospital. He had half his head. His head was shaved. His skull had been... scalp had been removed, but he went in for the cancer. So you see him like this. Then he said something along the lines, I know I look horrible to you, but I want you to understand something. You have to enjoy life. He said, I would do anything if I can make a deal with God to get out of here one more day and go play golf. This man was about to die. Had this big old scar on his head, and he was thinking about golf.
It's the little things in life.
So you learn. I've learned a lot by being open-minded in regards to people. I know I'm proud of being black, but I learned, like I told you, the Russian, Murray Goodman, and then you take Jack Gallagher and yourself and others, your dad, and then you roll in a Don King, and then you roll in Ali, who didn't have a hateful bone in my opinion, in his life.
Yeah.
You could ask him. I remember, and I'll tell you this one in the end. The guy comes up to Muhammad Ali. He's training here for one of those fights. I mean, this is in '71. Jimmy Ellis or Buster Mathis. A guy comes up to him and says he needs some help in regards to opening a beauty shop, beauty barber shop. So he said, Ali said, "What are you talking about?" He said, I'm trying to get it off the ground. I need some help. So he said, "What are you talking about? What kind of money are you talking about?" So he got $4,000 or $5,000. He reached in his pocket. This is the honest truth, and pulled out a wad full of money and went to give it to him. Then he stopped and he said, hold it a minute. And he took 2 $100 bills. He said, I need to keep a little change in my pocket, and gave him the rest of the money.
Wow.
And guess what? The guy did build a barbershop and a beauty shop. He did build and he went there and took pictures. So we've been around some great people.
That's
And
awesome.
we've been blessed. So thank you.
Thank you for
Mr.
sharing
S.
these stories.
Thank you, Mr. S.
Yes, sir. Thank you for these stories. This is inspirational.
Mr. S, I told you that this would be a great one. It has been.
I know you're excited from the
I've been
get-go, so I
excited.
could see it.
I can see us doing another story with
I
him.
certainly can.
And we could just talk for hours. But we're going to close this today.
Thank you.
You know, all good things have to end temporarily.
Right.
And so we're going to bring him back. Ralph, thank you for being
Thank
our
you,
No
Ralph.
problem. No, thank you.
me and Mr. S guests. And just remember, when you get knocked down in the ring of life, great example. You got to get back up. You got to persevere. And, you know, there's a scripture in the Bible that says we can do all things through Christ.
Right.
Hey, we can.
Right.
We can do it. So I'm going to close in saying goodbye. And Mr. S, what about you?
Keep on going. That's it. Get back up. You're going to get knocked down.
Get up.
Get back up. Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you.
I'm going to hug you.
Oh, yeah. No problem.
Love you, man.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Yeah.